Hi, this is Lee Viramondelli, and this is the commentary for the Artisan Wraith issue 3. So I'd mentioned last issue, but just to recap, the cover here is, a hand of someone that we will meet in this issue who was returning from the first series, and they're touching a child's drawing. I wanted something to be kind of both friendly and also incredibly ominous if you know what, the Artisan Wraith is. I tried to look at children's drawings online to get roughly an idea of, not an exact approximation, but what do they when they draw a person, what is important to them? And one thing I saw was it's all about what the action is doing. If someone's hitting a baseball bat, they will draw the arms really kind of detailed in their mind, but then there's almost no legs. And so here I was like, okay, the Artisan Wraith is giving a hug to them. That was kind of the POV as one of these kids. So it's really just, that's the important part. And then even the kill lock symbol the artisan has, which is like a black X. The idea is that shape is too complicated. So that's why it's just like a bunch of scribbled lines here. And then the first page here is the Lurk and the Resolve kind of recovering from the beating they took last issue, where the Lurk's kind of carrying her arm, and they're going to basically a communications facility, communications shed on this planet that they're able to break into and then hijack the technology and send a transmission. The idea is that they have an emergency signal they've been given by the Forgers that they can actually reach out to a very dangerous force and ask for assistance. And the people that they contact are the Wraith Triumvirate. We meet two of them here. These are the trio of characters that command the Legion from the first series. So these are the top Wraith of the universe. So our Wraith from the first series, the one that's currently the Artisan Wraith, he is sort of a grunt in that army. He really is not truly that important in terms of the hierarchy, but these three are. So Legion Envoy here is basically their top military enforcer, commander of their ground forces, and also combat trainer of the Legion. So at least a good bit of it. So he would have been the combat trainer of the Wraith from the first series. Legion Viscount is basically commander of their sky forces. He's a little more kind of chilly and cold. Envoy is more of the actual ground combatant. And then Viscount is their communications, what passes for a communications person to the outside world. I wanted kind of a Soundwave-ish character in Legion Viscount, someone that was in this army, but they physically don't really fight themselves, really. Soundwave does a bit, but it's really kind of more, espionage and communications, and your focus is something else, which is also what we haven't seen in the Legion before. And so I wanted there to be very kind of clearly explained that there is an uneasiness between the entire civilization that the Forgers created, which is all the robots we knew from the first series, except for the Wraith, and the Wraith Legion, where they have this uneasy sort of truce, where sometimes they will choose to help and sometimes they won't, based on their own personal preferences and what they are doing. And that's something that will really be explained more in this series, and both the present and also the past of what led to this kind of arrangement in the beginning. And I wanted to keep them hidden right here, like the idea that they're transmitting from such a deep part of the galaxy that the transmission wouldn't be clear. I find too that gives a lot of reality when, any kind of science fiction really benefits when the technology has limits and it doesn't work perfectly. So we find here that, the Resolve is telling them they're sort of insulting and patronizing, and she basically tells them, well, just so you know, he's planning to raid the homeworld. So if you think you have problems now, you're gonna have to take care of the entire homeworld if he takes it over. So basically she tells them that, and I wanted it to be unclear what they are planning to do. The Resolve and the Lurk then head back into the town, and their plan is basically just to get off world, because their mission is done. The idea of if they are not physically able to take out a force, they are able to make that call, and then it's up to the Legion to do what it will choose to do here. And then the Forgers beyond that. But I wanted them to be interrupted on the way out by sort of a friendly member of the people that live there. So even though he has the kill lock, this green labor class is, he's not a bad guy. That he's sort of like some of the characters in the first series who had the kill lock, where, whatever he did was, he really regrets, and it wasn't quite, he wasn't a bad person. And also he gives a little bit more backstory to the world here, where he says that, initially it really was just the really awful kill lock sentencees came here. Then when the Artisan Wraith conquered them, he basically said, you can bring all your people you care about, and I'll watch over all of them. So now on this planet, there's a lot of people that don't have the kill lock, and they're just people that want to live under his protection, or they're friends with someone that has the kill lock. The idea of that, if you're friends with someone on death row, then you care about them. That doesn't mean you're also on death row, but it does mean that part of you is suffering as well. So he kind of takes them through the town here. Worth noting, this wide shot when they're walking, you see kind of a gold debris in the background on this building. That's something you'll see in the next issue, but that is some of the remains of the gold ship that they were using in the first series, where now it's been parked on this planet and repurposed into building part of their city, which is kind of evolving. And he also tells them that, you're not the first visitor we've had lately. We've had a lot of new visitors, including this next person we meet, which is the Axial from the first series, who has come to this planet. And I wanted her to be wearing, her outfit continues to sort of change, where we see a glimpse of her. She's wearing black when we first see her in the first series. Then we see a flashback and she's wearing white. Now she's wearing almost this kind of funeral looking, kind of cloth over her face, where the notion that she understands what has happened in the first series because of what she allowed. And so if she had regret before, she has a lot more regret now. And that's why she's come to this planet. And I wanted the Resolve and the Axial to kind of fake that they don't really know who each other is until the labor class leaves, and the Resolve drops the shroud just as the Axial drops her kind of shroud, literally. And some exposition here to keep up, to catch new readers, and also the Lurk, who was not aware. The idea is he hasn't really read the brief on this mission. But not only does the Resolve know the Axial helped the Artisan Wraith unintentionally in the first series, but created the kill lock. So then with the Resolve slamming her against the wall here, I like the notion that the last thing the Resolve thought was that this mission was going to bring her, face to face with the creator of something that she really suffered through. And I thought that added an extra dimension too, that even though the Axial came here theoretically to help, it still is like the curse of this punishment she created that is living on to just continue to cause her, grief. This page after them talking, going back and forth, where, the bit more exposition between the Lurk and the Axial about how the world basically works, where the Forgers find you useful up to a point. But in all of them, the Resolve class and the Axial here, it's like once you give them something that they need, they'll only let you retire if they don't, if they, not because they think you earned a nice retirement. It's that they don't want you to undo it, or they would just want you to go away. It's never really benevolent kind of ending. But I wanted this to lead off to the Artisan Wraith actually showing up in town here, and this view of him kind of being welcome and almost like a parade going on of people that are thrilled to see him, because to them he has been a great protector. They felt safe for the first time ever. And we get a bit more backstory about what it's like to live here under his protection. And I like this moment here that, the labor class that we had a very, contentious relationship with in the first series, he knows how to treat the labor class and how to keep them motivated to work hard, because he actually is, because he's very intelligent and knows how to manipulate people. He knows how to keep them happy, to be productive. Likewise with the Unfinished here, who are crawling all over him and showing the drawings they did of him. So that kind of ties back to the cover, that he really knows how to talk to them, because he has spent time with an Unfinished in the first series. So, and I wanted these looks from the Axial and the Resolve, who know kind of more of the true story that this green labor class doesn't know. This next page here, the labor class kind of says, you should meet him. I think you'd really like him, because they're playing dumb. The Axial especially is pretending to be pretty stupid here, pretty naive. But the Artisan Wraith coming over, I wanted their interaction here to be very kind of casual, where he's like, hey man, like, how you guys doing? Like, because they've had their big fight. He knows they're not a physical threat to him. So now there's actually going to be like a proper talk. And you also see when he dismisses the labor class that he's keeping an eye on the various districts of his planet. And, basically like he is truly kind of a better ruler than they expected. And we see here that he has allowed the Resolve to send that transmission, that by keeping them alive, it was never really, to send a message to the Forgers. It was that he knew that they wouldn't give up the mission, and they had been armed with this signal, because that's proper Resolve class, that he is aware of what the procedures are. They would have had a way to call the Wraith Legion, which is something he did not have access to, but now he does. And so I wanted this notion here where the Resolve looks down, where that's now 2 defeats by him. One was physical and the other one was kind of strategic. And he tells them, like, you're welcome to stay under my protection, but now you're not leaving the planet. You're not going to be able to interfere with what's coming. So he's like, I suggest, live under my protection, but when they show up, like, don't go outside. And so I wanted a bit of this here where there's a moment between the Axial and the Artisan Wraith where they haven't met in person since the Artisan kind of threatened her in her shop, and she sort of bowed to her own temper and her own resentment toward him that allowed him to go to the planet that he wanted to go to. And now everything that's happened since has been because of that. And so exploring more of her guilt there. And so we see on the next page here that the Resolve is unaware that there was even other robots inside the Artisan Wraith, that the Forgers intentionally left out the fact that there was a kid and then there's a labor class in there because they didn't want any kind of compassion getting in the way. They didn't want the Resolve class, if these ones had compassion, to not want to kill a kid. But I do like that the Lurk has this line where he's like, I didn't sign on to kill no drunk. That for him, unlike the first series where most everyone was worried about the kid, for him, he's like, he relates more to the laborer where he's like, this guy didn't do anything wrong. And then here we have the Axial touching a wall of kids' drawings. That's also meant, of course, to be the cover. Now we know whose hand that properly was. And then the final sequence here, sorry, we're not quite there yet. We go inside now to the Artisan Wraith's castle. The Artisan Wraith meets this robot where it's always, in this series, robots don't really have names. I mean, they have titles, or the Lurk is kind of the rare example of someone who's chosen to have a name. But this robot here, I just called Orange Guy. And I like that the Artisan Wraith refers to him that way too, that he's just kind of given him a name that is based on what he looks like. That kind of made me laugh. We return to kind of the dreamscape world here, and the laborer is kind of getting bored. He's sort of throwing rocks into this virtual lake and sort of irritating the Artisan. And the laborer then goes to approach the Wraith, and we see the laborer. This is an important start to kind of the laborer's arc in the story, where we saw it in the first series too, where there's an element of the laborer class that, he will care about the kid and others, but there is an aspect to him that, like a lot of addicts, it's really about him, and when he starts to personally suffer, that's when he really starts to lose his temper here. And that's kind of what's going. And I wanted this final Artisan Wraith sequence here to be him kind of speaking to the stars, and he's talking to the Legion and saying, like, I hope you have a safe journey. And this final sequence of the book, this is something I was really looking forward to doing, which is to show the Legion in its kind of full force. We saw them kind of briefly in the first series. We see a few of them, but this is really showing the army, in full force with their commanding trio present. So I liked reversing the conversation from the beginning. Like, we saw it end on the Resolve side, and now we see it ending on their side and what they saw. The notion here of the screens, that the everything, all technology of the Wraith Legion is crude and rudimentary. There's no buttons or switches. Legion Viscount here uses his hand to actually dissolve the transmission. And it's kind of this glowing sort of technology, almost kind of the fact that their blood and their eyes kind of glow. It is that this orange glow is kind of everything about their race. And then it was important here to show there's a kind of physical difference where Legion Envoy is covered in kind of the remains of battle and he's bulky. And then Legion Viscount is intentionally small. And there's a notion that he's a rare, he'll say in a later issue that he's a rare weak of their kind, where physically he's not that strong compared to a normal Wraith, where his powers or his abilities really are something else. But I wanted there to be an immediate kind of bond between these two, where he's like, let me clear this like debris off your shoulder. I wanted it to be that these two have been serving together at the top of this army for so long that it's kind of, they talk about how it's the army's straining, patrolling these endless worlds, but that's just the nature of the business they've been doing for so long. And then this spread here this was a shot I've wanted to do for a long time here, which is the full Legion, sort of the ships on the ground and both in the skies. I wanted their ships to be rock-like and kind of like stalactites, sort of like these like really kind of crude looking spaceships, and then keeping the same three lines that their eyes have as the kind of the signatures of the ship. There's another Wraithius symbol on the rotting flag on the far left, by the way. And this is the origin of one of the other major characters of this sequel, which is Legion Zenith, who is the top of the entire army. Like, he is the one that runs everything. And then Envoy and Viscount are his two, counterparts below. But he really is the top. And so what he's doing here is there's a sort of massive labor class robot. This is another colony planet that had been destroyed by the Legion after, atrocities on their end. But there's a massive labor class that is after their battle. Like, he personally fought the Legion. The Legion was impressed at how hard he fought. So he is basically holding him up and letting this robot die by absorbing the, last drink from his son. The notion that the robot's been living on this planet for a long time, and that's the son that he's known. And so Legion Zenith is going to give him this kind of like, pay him this honor for fighting so hard, which is something we saw the Wraith allude to in the first series. And then this spread is the first time we reveal Legion Zenith fully, where I wanted him to have a bit of kind of, not quite a regal, like I didn't want to do a cape again, but I wanted there to be sort of these, black kind of fabric, metallic fabric things that hang down to give him a little bit of a, higher up marking. And then his face too is sort of more elaborate than the others to suggest a little bit more, his status. And then Envoy and Viscount fill him in basically on everything that's transpired, where they tell him about the Resolve class transmission and what was happened to the Wraith we knew in the first series. And I wanted him to know the Wraith from the first series, that Legion Zenith, as he says, he knows all the members of his army, even the grunts, he knows them individually to some extent. And that he personally was bothered by what happened, that there was a Wraith sentenced to the kill lock. And now he said that not only was he sentenced, but what's happened to him since is even worse. So I wanted this kind of like quiet fury of his here. And then when the robot he's holding finally dies, he just casts him away and then makes the decision that they will go to Nalavas, and then the Legion is going to confront the Artisan Wraith next issue. And that is the end of this issue here. The cover for next issue is right here, which is the Artisan Wraith facing down the Wraith Legion, which will happen. And then pinups here, Josh Perez, who's an awesome Transformers artist. Just his colors are so cool. I love the glow of the Wraith's eyes here. Just really, really beautiful stuff. And the Artisan, them in the palm of the Artisan, is so great. This one is Nicole Gary is the last one. And I love this art too. Like the notion of the Wraith, holding, like I like the manipulation here of multiple figures playing with each other is a great metaphor for what this sequel really is about, and the manipulation, physically and metaphorically. And then thank you for listening. I'd like to thank Brian Ward for producing these podcasts, and I will see you next time.